people? We are going through Matthew. We're in chapter 25. We started the Olivet Discourse. I'm breaking this up into parts. We're going to see if we can get through these parables here, and then we'll have the section on the final judgment. And it's funny to me because if you read things like the section in the final judgment of the Olivet Discourse, it's impossible that, to me anyway, that you would walk away and say that universalism is acceptable, or that there isn't punishment for sin or universal justice from God. This idea of God being holy is throughout the entire Bible. In fact, in the Old Testament, when people weren't holy and they stood before God, they died. So anyway, in chapter 25, we're going on with the Olivet Discourse, and Jesus is talking about what we can do to be prepared. And remember, the parables, Jesus tells us that they're telling us something about the kingdom. And he says, you guys understand this because you know something about the kingdom. Sorry, I'm going to adjust this. You know something about the kingdom, right? And other people don't get it. And so parables are how I speak about this to show you glimpses of the kingdom. So in chapter 25, it goes like this. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, "Here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise answered, saying, "Since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves." While they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward the other virgins came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." So kind of an interesting parable there, where there's 10 virgins waiting for the bridegroom to come, and 5 of them were ready. 5 of them had what they needed when the bridegroom did come, and they were able to draw on that and use it to be prepared and to go into the wedding feast. They were ready when he came, and so they made it into the feast. The people that weren't ready had to go get oil for their lamps. And I think it's interesting that the lamp is being used, right? A lamp, what does a lamp provide? Provides light. So it says everybody fell asleep. One thing that is very interesting to me about this is that it talks about falling asleep. Many times death is likened to sleep. So I think that's an interesting point. But so the foolish say, "Hey, give us what you've prepared," but apparently that doesn't work for some reason. And I don't know if it's a really key part of this example or not, but I do know what's a key part is that the virgins that were not ready, when this finally happened, the bridegroom goes into the feast, and they knock on the door, and he says, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you." And they're turned away. So then we have the parable of the 10 talents. The parable of the talents, I should say. My bad. Verse 14, "For it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing the 5 talents more, saying, 'Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master.' And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, 'Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master.' He also had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, 'Master, I know you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours." But his master answered him, "You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So again, there's this idea of being entrusted. God entrusts us with talents, resources, spirit, and we're supposed to turn an investment on this. When we look at the Great Commission and what Jesus tells us about following him and all of these different things, it's not exactly the stock market, it's not like a bullish stock market. It's not like we can just invest and stocks are going up. Basically, when you sign up for the Christian life, you're told it's going to be difficult. People are going to persecute you. It's going to be hard. And what is the expectation here? The expectation is that you come along for the ride and you do your best with what you have. And so it's interesting to look at the talents. It's interesting to try to figure out what those symbolize, right? Those resources. But it is pretty clear that the good and faithful servant is one who takes that investment that's been trusted and does more with it. They just don't sit on it. It reminds me of another parable that I always thought was kind of weird. Because the parable is the parable of the great pearl and the great treasure in a field. So man finds a great treasure in a field and he goes and buries it and sells all that he has just to buy that field. And I always thought that was weird because doesn't that kind of contradict what's happening here? This guy just buries it, but it's highlighting a different aspect of the kingdom of heaven. And so one aspect is that we're supposed to recognize the value, right? Which is what these people are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be recognizing that while their master's gone is an opportunity. So it's interesting because the bridegroom in the first parable and the master in the second parable are gone away. They're absent. And compared to the prophetic period and the time when Jesus walked the earth, it feels a little more lonely to me sometimes. I mean, can you imagine what it would have been like to know that prophets were speaking to God? And we have a direct communication because of Jesus. We can pray and God hears our prayers, but this day and age, sometimes it gets a little lonely. And we look around at the world and what's happening and we wonder if it's the end times. We wonder if it's the last days. We wonder, and we know it is, and we're told it is, and we're told not to be shocked. And we're still told to do what we can to earn an investment on what God has given us. Jesus paid the sacrifice. He paid the price for all of our sins. We are given grace and mercy. So we need to extend that to other people. We need to multiply that. And that's something that we can do freely. We also need to multiply people's joy and love. Again, these are all talents that we've been given to multiply, as well as money, if you have that gift and that talent, right? So it's interesting because it's very harsh that the man who was not given much, that what he had was taken from him if he sat on it, if he just buried it and tried to conserve it. So again, the parables these are a little bit difficult to understand, and they're not really difficult to understand on some levels, but they're so nuanced and there's so much to them that you could chew on this. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he said he's been chewing on this for like a month or two. Like ever since his pastor did a sermon on this, or he was reading it, and he started thinking about it and looking into it, and he's just like, man, I just kept chewing on it. It's one of those things that just wouldn't leave me alone. So I like that there are very dense concepts in this part of the gospel where it kind of slows down. Jesus is talking about weightier matters, and you can kind of let the weight of it just sit on you. But at the same time, you want to chew on it. You want to understand it so that you can, act that out in the world. Apply it. So anyways, that's part 2 of the Olivet Discourse. So we're at verse 31 in chapter 25, which is the final judgment. And again, that's part of this discourse where Jesus is talking about what the outcome is going to be. So after doing all of this, what is the outcome? What is the reward for those who stick with it? What is the punishment for those who don't? And it's very clearly laid out that there is a reward for people that obey and live in God's ordered fashion and that are saved through faith in Christ. And there are those that aren't. And so that's a harsh reality that we have to wrap our head around on that part. And then we're in chapter 26, 27, 28, which is the plot to kill Jesus. So we roll right from the Olivet Discourse and Jesus talking about the end times. You can almost, with the place in the gospel that it is, you can almost feel this sense of urgency as Jesus is talking through the Olivet Discourse as you read it. I know that it's difficult when somebody else is reading it, so I apologize if I'm a little dry or whatever. But it's so weighty. It's got so much oomph, substance to it when you read it. And I don't know what to do with all of it, right? But it's important not to skip over it. So thanks for going through that with me. Like I said, we're going to go through the final judgment next, and then we'll be into the last 3 chapters of Matthew. So first gospel I've gotten through, and I'm just super stoked to be going through it. I've learned a lot about the gospels on my journey. I hope that I've passed off a little bit of that to you guys. And anyways, video's going on too long. Like and subscribe to catch them all as they come out, and I'll catch you in the next video. All right, peace.